Alright guys, we're going to talk some more about the nuts and bolts here. Once you've gotten your crew together, you know, whoever your immediate guys are, you're going to need to immediately start setting about answering a couple of questions. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to look around at each other and somebody's going to say, okay, who's in charge? This is usually not the best way to do this kind of thing. The best way to do this kind of thing and to figure out what your hierarchy is going to be is to find out what jobs you need right away and who the best person for those jobs is. Obviously, my recommendation is that you look to existing models for anything and figure out what works, and then in the future you can sort of tweak those things a little bit and make sure that they work a little bit better for you. A lot of our detractors will call us like wannabe bikers or whatever, but the fact is that number one, we've been riding motorcycles for probably a lot longer than these fucking trolls have had their Instagram accounts together. And number two is that since the inception of this club, we have looked to and been informed by friends of ours in the outlaw motorcycle world because of the fact that they have a structure and a model that functions for what they do. We don't follow that model exactly, but the reason that they still use it is because it works. They didn't invent it, they used another existing model. So it would be pretty stupid not to take a really long period of time in which something has worked and has consistently functioned properly for an organization and not be informed by it. That's just completely like willfully ignorant. So what I mean by this is that you can take an exec board, if you have, you know, 4 or 5 guys, and you can say, all right, president, vice president, sergeant, secretary, treasurer, sometimes the same person, whatever, and you can run down that list and you can immediately assign people to these jobs. Or you can actually spend some time and think about, you know, who's going to be the best for this job. You know, you might have a 120-pound guy in the club who, you know, thinks he knows fucking karate or some shit, and he wants to be the sergeant because he wants whatever, like, prestige or whatever that he feels goes along with that in your little group. But he's not the good guy for the job. He's not the best guy for the job. He's some dude with this, you know, chip on his shoulder with a lot to prove. That's not a dude you want in that position. Who you want in the sergeant position is like a guy who's good at de-escalating situations, somebody who's very perceptive about what is happening, especially on a confrontation level, somebody who keeps a level head in situations, who doesn't drink very much. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into choosing people for each specific position, and sometimes you won't know that until you give it a shot. So one thing you can do is kind of assign jobs on a provisional level or whatever, and then kind of figure it out from there and reassign these things as you go on based on people's performance in them. You know, give people a 3-month chance or something like that, and then see where they might work. You know, the fact is when you get more members, you're going to have people on an exec board and you're going to have other members. It's really important to understand the fact that the exec board doesn't necessarily make you, you know, something more than the rest of the guys who are members. What it means is that you've been chosen to do a job that people decided you were the best for, and that really you don't get a lot more accolades. You just have a job and you have more responsibilities because you've either been there longer or you're better at something than someone else is. So when you're choosing your hierarchy, make sure it makes sense. Figure it out and figure out who's going to be good for what job, and then assign those jobs. You know, the second thing that you're going to have to think about is funding. Unfortunately, nothing in this world really comes free, and if you're trying to establish a club that's going to have any kind of longevity, you need funding. Obviously, the first way to do that and to handle that is dues. You know, raising money internally, pick a number, stick with it. You know, it's one of those things where I said this in one of the articles in my book, that if you've got 4 or 5 guys kicking in, you know, $10 or $20 a month, you're not going to get far fast. If you've got 5 or 6 guys kicking in $50 or $100 a month, things become a lot more realistic. Goals that seem impossible at first become a lot more reasonable and more within your grasp in a shorter amount of time. So the fact is that you have to pick a number that everyone can accomplish monthly, but it shouldn't lowball. If this club is important, then it should be a priority, which means it should be a financial priority. If guys are having trouble paying their dues, but they've always got cigarettes and beer on the weekends, get that motherfucker out, because he's obviously not taking it seriously as you are, and if he's not, he needs to go. So pick that number, stick with it. There's a lot of other ways to raise cash for an organization. We can get into some of that next time. But for now, you know, establish dues and stick to it. What your funds should be used for, first and foremost, is your meetings anything where you guys get together and you do events and stuff, part of the fun of being in a club is that shit is covered by dues that you've already pitched in, so you don't have to do it every single time. You can pay for a lot of stuff out of your pocket if you want to, but things on an organizational level, you shouldn't have to pay for. You know, we throw events where a lot of people come to those events. You know, we provide those people with, you know, beer and food and all this kind of stuff, and you know, we've you know, posted these pictures on the internet or whatever of like piles of cash, and people will be like, oh, gross, blah blah blah, and you're like, what's gross about hospitality? You know, it's pretty hard to run an organization that hosts events or anything like that and wants to show generosity and hospitality without having the stacks in order to do it. So this kind of anti-money impulse usually is only talked shit about, you know, by people without it or people who are jealous of what you have anyway. So, you know, make yourself a force to be reckoned with, and one of the ways to do that is with cash. So take that cash and figure out where your hub is going to be. Okay, you can meet at somebody's house or basement or whatever for a while, but that place is anchored to that person. Within 10, 12 years that I've been doing this, I've seen a lot of friends come and go that I never thought would come and go. And if you have property or your place anchored to a specific person, once they're gone, it's gone. So that's something that not all of us like to think about, but this shit does happen, and your heart of your organization needs to be owned by the organization. There's a lot of legalese around that, but it's pretty easy to figure out. So if you're like a car club, a garage or a shop is obviously, you know, a no-brainer. If you're based more around fitness, training, boxing, you know, a gym space, or, you know, even like a storage unit with power that you can use to do that. You know, for us, we're not a car club, we're not a motorcycle club, we're not a boxing club, although we have elements of all that kind of stuff. Our needs are different, so we buy property, we buy it outdoors, and we build on it, you know, because we're lucky enough to have guys with those skills. So again, choose what works for you. Don't choose what another group has done. Figure out what you want and what you need to do and start there. So next time we'll get into some other stuff, and we'll get into what to look for in prospective members and some pitfalls and poison to avoid when you're bringing new guys in, and what the best ways we've found to bring new people into the organization are. So I hope you guys are learning from this. Like I said, any questions, comments, anything you'd like to see in the future, just throw it down in the comments, and when I get around to checking them out, we'll address those one by one. Thank you.